You're traveling through the unknown, a journey beyond the corners of reality, where the shadows whisper and the chill runs deep. Welcome to the dimension where your deepest fears are given form. This is The Midnight Mystery.
Welcome to The Midnight Mystery. This episode is called Nightmare Over Elmdale. In each episode, we delve into the shadowed corners of our existence, bringing you tales of the eerie, the uncanny, and the downright terrifying. From the realms of the supernatural to the depths of the human psyche, no stone is left unturned, no dark secret left hidden. In this episode, a tight-knit community of Elmdale, a school bus full of children mysteriously disappears, sparking a desperate search led by the town's sheriff. Eerie riddles start appearing throughout the town, suggesting the culprit is one of Elmdale's own. As the clock once again draws near midnight, prepare to embark on another adventure into the uncanny, the eerie, the horrifying, the midnight mystery. I've always prided myself on knowing every face, every story in our little town of Elmdale. It's part of the job description, I suppose. As sheriff, I thought I'd seen it all. Petty theft, the occasional bar fight. But nothing could have prepared me for the chilling turn that one fateful morning took. The air was cool and crisp as dawn broke, the sun casting long shadows that played hide-and-seek with the picturesque houses. The familiar sound of children's laughter rang through the air as the school bus lumbered down Main Street, picking up its young charges. Little did I know, this image of tranquility would soon be shattered. I was nursing my third cup of coffee at the diner when the call came in. A nervous chatter on the police scanner, something about a missing bus. A cold dread crept into my stomach as I tossed a bill onto the counter and rushed out. The first person I encountered was Mrs. Rafferty, her pale face mirroring the anxiety I was trying to keep at bay. She wrung her hands as she spoke, her voice shaky. "Sheriff Andrew, it's the children, the school bus. It didn't reach the school," she stuttered, her eyes welling up. For a second, time seemed to stand still. The jovial chatter of the diner, the clatter of dishes, faded into an indistinct hum. I steeled myself, focusing on the gravity of Mrs. Rafferty's words. "What do you mean the bus didn't reach the school, Mary?" I asked, my voice steady but strained. She pointed to the school, a hive of activity, where a group of frantic parents had already started to gather. I called the school when little Timmy didn't come back. They said the bus never arrived." Her words tumbled out, chased by a fresh wave of tears. A pit formed in my stomach as the magnitude of the situation settled in. A school bus full of children vanished without a trace. This was no ordinary day in Elmdale, and I could already feel the shockwaves reverberating through our tight-knit community. As sheriff of Elmdale, I had earned my stripes dealing with the routine, keeping peace, settling disputes, and ensuring law and order. The community respected me, and I them. It was a trust built over years through countless little and big moments. I stood in front of the station, the summer sun beating down relentlessly. Yet I felt a chill snake down my spine as I faced the crowd gathered. Anxious parents, curious onlookers, the media. Their eyes were filled with a question they were afraid to voice, one that echoed in my mind too. Where were the children? "Ladies and gentlemen," I began, my voice steady, echoing off the station's brick walls. "I understand your fears and concerns. I promise you, we will do everything in our power to find the children. This is my highest priority." A murmur rippled through the crowd, followed by a silence so profound it was almost palpable. My deputy, Lou, stood by my side, his expression a mirror image of my own grim determination. Later, within the confines of my office, Lou and I went over everything: the route, the timeline, the driver's background. As a seasoned officer, Lou knew the drill, but this was no ordinary investigation, and we both felt the weight of it. "Sheriff," Lou started, his usually cheerful voice heavy. "We've never handled something of this magnitude before." "I know, Lou," I replied, running a hand over my stubbled chin. "But we have a duty to these families, to our town. We will find these children." I could see the flicker of doubt in his eyes, but also a spark of resolve. It was a reflection of my own emotions. Uncertainty twined with the unyielding determination that we'd bring our town's children home. And so, under the weight of a whole community's hope, the investigation began. As the lead investigator on this case, I felt like I was in the center of a storm. Each hour that passed with no news of the children was a fresh gust of wind, threatening to knock me off my feet. The pressure was immense, but we had a job to do. So when Lou and I got a tip about a vehicle spotted in the nearby forest, we were on it in minutes. As our cruiser crunched over the forest's underbrush, I felt a twinge of hope. The ominous sight that greeted us, however, made my heart drop. The yellow school bus sat alone amidst the trees, silent and eerily empty. Lou was the first one out of the car. "Sheriff!" he called out, a tremor in his voice. I followed him, my boots crunching on the carpet of dry leaves. The bus was eerily still, the cheerful color a stark contrast against the green and brown backdrop of the forest. I took a deep breath, steeling myself for what we might find, and stepped up onto the bus. It was as if time had frozen, the children's belongings scattered around, a comic book flapping in the wind, a half-eaten sandwich left on a seat. My heart pounded in my chest as I moved down the aisle. The driver's seat was empty, his ID tag still swinging from the rear-view mirror. Lou followed me, his face pale, a grim expression etching lines around his mouth. There's no one here, Sheriff," he stuttered, his voice barely a whisper. "The driver, the children, there's no sign of them." His words hung heavy in the air as we processed the reality of our discovery. It was like a nightmarish scene from a movie, one I would have never imagined witnessing in our peaceful little town. The abandoned bus, the absence of the children. It was a chilling mystery that we were now tasked to unravel. "All right, Lou," I said, my voice sounding distant even to my own ears. "Let's get forensics down here. Maybe they can find something we can't see." As we exited the bus, the reality of our situation settled in, weighing heavy on our hearts. The forest seemed to close in around us, the shadows deepening, the bus a lonely beacon of our worst fears. The children were gone, and it was our job to find them. And so, with a grim resolve, we got back to work. Just when I thought the situation couldn't get any more disturbing, it did. As the search for the missing children intensified, a new element was introduced into the chaos. Eerie messages started appearing around town. Each one was a riddle, an enigma, cryptic words hinting that one of our own was behind this unthinkable act. I was walking towards the station one morning when I noticed the first message. It was scrawled across the wall of the old hardware store, a chilling message written in a childish scrawl. "The first is hidden where the sun doesn't shine." I stared at it, my morning coffee turning cold in my hand. I turned to Lou, who was already snapping pictures with his phone. "Get this over to the station," I said. "Have someone start looking into it." Then came another message, and another. They started appearing everywhere, on mailboxes, buildings, even tucked into the local newspaper. Each message seemed to be a riddle, a clue, as if the perpetrator was playing a twisted game with us. Lou burst into my office one afternoon, his face pale, the local newspaper in his hand. "You need to see this, Sheriff," he said, pointing to a small ad in the corner of the page. "Find the watcher, find the lost." The words sent a shiver down my spine. We were being toyed with. The seriousness of the situation turned into some kind of sadistic treasure hunt. "I've had enough of this," I snapped, slamming my fist onto the table. "Whoever's doing this is going to pay." Lou nodded, his face mirroring my anger and frustration. "We're doing everything we can, Sheriff. We'll find them." The eerie riddles started to consume us. They were everywhere, etched on buildings, hidden in the local newspaper, and scribbled on mailboxes. Each one was more chilling than the last, sending shivers down my spine and turning my gut into knots. Hide and seek, a game we play. Find the lost before they stray. Look to the hills, the secrets they keep. There lies the answer you so desperately seek. Each riddle was like a punch to the gut. The suggestion behind them, that one of Elmdale's own was behind this, was a chilling thought. It planted seeds of doubt, suspicion, and fear in the minds of the townsfolk. The atmosphere in Elmdale had always been close-knit, more of a family than just a community. Now it felt like a pressure cooker, ready to explode at any moment. I could see it in the way people looked at each other. Suspicion replacing friendly nods, whispers replacing cheery greetings. One day, while Lou and I were grabbing lunch at the diner, we overheard a heated conversation at the next table. 3 of the town's oldest residents were leaning in close, their voices hushed. It's gotta be that rich widow up on the hill, Mr. Hitch was saying, a finger jabbing into the air for emphasis. Lives alone in that huge house. Doesn't talk to anyone. She's eccentric, I tell ya. No, countered Mrs. Henderson, shaking her head. I've heard stories about that new author who moved into town last year. He's always kept to himself. Writing those thrillers? It's not right. Lou and I exchanged a look. The anxiety was getting to everyone. It was a town-wide witch hunt, with accusations flying everywhere. It was unsettling, but in a way it was also a sign of just how desperate everyone was for answers. We're gonna figure this out, Lou, I said quietly, feeling the weight of the town's fear and suspicion. We have to. He nodded, his gaze serious. Yes, Sheriff, we will. But despite our determination, the answer remained elusive. The riddles remained unsolved, and the children remained missing. The suspicion continued to grow, eating at the heart of Elmdale, turning friends into suspects. It was a dark time, and I had a sinking feeling that things were about to get a lot darker. Cracking those cryptic messages was like trying to piece together a puzzle with missing pieces. But I didn't have the luxury of time. The town was growing more restless each day, each passing hour without the children feeding the fear and suspicion. One late evening, I found myself poring over the clues yet again, scattered across my office desk like confetti. My eyes were drawn to one particular message. The key to the lost in disgruntled hands tossed. Something about that riddle struck a chord. Disgruntled hands, I muttered to myself. And then it hit me. Frank. Frank, who had been fired from the school district last year, was certainly disgruntled. Could he be the one? I called Lou into my office. Look at this, I said, pointing at the message. Could disgruntled hands refer to Frank? He was pretty bitter after losing his job. Lou looked at the message, then at me, his eyes wide. Sheriff, you might be onto something. It's the first lead we've got that makes any sense. The next morning, we brought Frank in. The man was a wreck, his eyes red-rimmed, his hands shaking as we read him his rights. But when we asked him about the children, his bewilderment seemed genuine. I don't know anything about this, Frank said. I was angry about losing my job, yes, but I would never hurt those kids. His alibi was rock solid. He had been out of town during the time of the disappearance, visiting his ailing mother in a nearby city. His mother, the neighbors, even a gas station receipt confirmed his story. Despite my initial surge of hope, I found myself back at square one. Frank was not our guy. The real culprit was still out there, and the cryptic messages were the only lead we had. With a heavy heart, I released Frank and returned to my desk, the riddles staring back at me like a taunt. The solution was there, somewhere, hidden within those cryptic words. I just had to find it. The fear and panic that had been simmering under the surface in Elmdale began to boil over. The town, once a close-knit community where neighbors would share pies and watch each other's children, had been transformed into a fortress of fear. Every morning, as I walked through town, I would see mothers and fathers hustling their kids to and from school, their faces drawn and anxious. Playdates were canceled. Parks that were once filled with the laughter of children sat empty, the swings swaying eerily in the breeze. One afternoon, while having a quick coffee at the local diner, I overheard a heated argument between two mothers, both old friends. You can't just keep her locked inside, Susan, one was saying, her voice full of concern. Sarah needs to see her friends, to live her life. I can't risk it, Lisa, Susan snapped back, her face pale and drawn. Not until they find out who did this. Friendships, built over years, started showing the strain. Everyone viewed everyone else with suspicion. Trust was a rare commodity. Paranoia had set in deep. I heard rumors that some families were planning to leave town to get away from the fear that was gripping Elmdale. One day, a man came into the station, claiming his neighbor was acting suspicious. He's been burning stuff in his backyard, Sheriff, the man said, his eyes wide with fear. I saw him late in the night. We followed up on every lead, no matter how far-fetched. Each time, it only served to heighten the fear, the realization that we were no closer to finding the culprit or the children. Fear had gripped Elmdale, squeezing tight and refusing to let go. As the sheriff, it was my duty to protect my town, my people, but each passing day, each unanswered riddle, made it feel like fear was winning. The call came in late one evening. a frantic voice reporting a child wandering near the edge of town. My heart jumped into my throat as I recognized the description. It was Lily, one of the missing children. When I reached the spot, she was huddled under a tree, her small frame shivering in the chill. She looked up as I approached, her eyes wide with terror. "Lily," I said, forcing a reassuring smile onto my face. "You're safe now, okay?" She stared at me, her eyes vacant. Then she began to speak, her voice barely a whisper. The mask. Man in the mask." The hair on the back of my neck stood on end. "A masked man took you?" I asked. She nodded, her gaze never leaving mine. My mind started racing. A masked man, an underground place. Her fragmented story was horrifying, but it was the first solid lead we had. I called Lou over to take care of Lily, then headed towards the Old Town factory. It was a derelict place, abandoned for years. But Lily's description had matched it. Armed with a flashlight, I ventured inside, the musty smell of damp and decay filling my nostrils. I searched the place high and low, and just as I was beginning to lose hope, I noticed something unusual in the floor. A slightly raised, square platform. With a crowbar and every ounce of strength I had, I managed to pry it open, revealing a hidden staircase. My heart pounded in my chest as I descended. It was an underground bunker. The sight that greeted me was one I'll never forget. The missing children were there, huddled together in one corner, their faces pale and eyes wide with terror. The bus driver lay unconscious nearby. I quickly called for backup, relief flooding through me. We had found them. The kids were frightened, but unharmed. As the children were rushed to the hospital and parents were informed, I couldn't help but feel a chill creep up my spine. We may have found the children, but the man behind the mask was still out there, his identity a mystery. This was far from over. The riddles started making sense when I discovered a torn page of a mystery novel in the bunker. The book was from our town's library, and the librarian, Miss Harper, was the only person I knew who had read almost every mystery novel in existence. Slowly, things started falling into place. Miss Harper, the soft-spoken woman who had dedicated her life to the world of books. Could she be the one hiding behind the mask? With a newfound determination, I went to the library the next day. Miss Harper was there, arranging books on the shelves, her face serene. As I approached her, my heart pounded in my chest. "Miss Harper," I began, showing her the torn page. "Do you recognize this?" She glanced at it, her face paling noticeably. I might have. It's from one of the books here." I looked at her, trying to read her. "Why, Miss Harper?" I asked. "Why did you do this?" She crumbled then, her face contorting in pain. "I wanted to protect them," she cried, her voice barely a whisper. "The world, it's not safe anymore. I wanted to keep them safe, to give them a chance." My mind reeled at her words. Her intentions were warped, misguided, and had inflicted untold pain on the town and the children. But there was no denying the truth. The quiet, book-loving librarian had been the mastermind. In the end, it wasn't some external danger, but one of our own who had shattered our peace. As I took Miss Harper into custody, the reality of her actions hit me. The town of Elmdale was safe once more, but the scars of the ordeal would linger, a haunting reminder of the fear that had once consumed us. The news of Miss Harper's death hit the recovering town like a second blow. She had been under house arrest. Her quaint house on Maple Street turned into a gilded cage. When I entered her silent home, the eeriness was palpable. In her study, I found her sprawled on the floor, her face pale and lifeless. The cause of death was unclear, her body showing no signs of violence or struggle. In her hand was clutched a worn, leather-bound diary. Back at the station, I pored over the diary, the weight of the day making my head throb. The entries were disjointed, filled with Miss Harper's ramblings and fears. But as I read, a chill ran down my spine. Miss Harper wrote about a greater evil, something she believed the children were in danger from. Her words painted a terrifying picture of an ancient curse on Elmdale that reawakens every 50 years, claiming the lives of children. I called Lou into my office, his face ashen as he read the passages I pointed out. "Could she be telling the truth, Sheriff?" he asked, his voice barely above a whisper. I sighed, rubbing my temples. "I don't know, Lou. It's a lot to take in. A curse? It sounds like something straight out of one of her novels. Yet I couldn't shake off the unease that had settled in my gut. The coincidences were chilling. The disappearance of the children, Miss Harper's unexpected death. As night fell, I found myself standing on the outskirts of Elmdale, the lights of the town twinkling in the distance. The diary felt heavy in my pocket, Miss Harper's words echoing in my mind. Elmdale slowly began to heal. The children were back, their laughter returning to the parks and streets. Miss Harper's diary was dismissed as the ramblings of a disturbed mind. Ancient curses were the stuff of folklore and horror movies, not something that touched our quiet town. But on the 50th day after the children's return, something changed. As evening descended, the lights in Elmdale flickered and died, plunging us into an unexpected darkness. Panic swept through the town like wildfire. Parents rushed to gather their children, fear returning with a vengeance. Then the first report came in. A child missing. Then another. Then another. Lily, brave little Lily who had helped me crack this case, was among them. Disappeared. Just like before. I felt like I was living a nightmare, the past repeating itself in the most horrific way. The diary. Miss Harper's diary. I rushed to my office, frantically searching for the worn, leather-bound book. As I read her words again, her ramblings about a greater evil, a curse that reawakens every 50 years, my blood ran cold. Had we dismissed the truth as the delusions of a deranged mind? Had we been blind to the real danger facing our town? I thought about Lily, her wide-eyed innocence, her terror when we found her, the other children, their parents, the entire town. Regret welled up in me, sharp and bitter. We had been wrong. I had been wrong. I hope you enjoyed our episode. I'd like to extend a heartfelt thanks to you, our brave listeners. Your presence in this shared journey into the unknown is what fuels our stories. Your fascination is our motivation. Did this episode send chills down your spine? Leave your comments, share your thoughts, your theories, your own midnight mysteries. Your feedback is the beacon that guides us through the uncharted territories of our stories. And if you haven't already, remember to subscribe to our channel. By joining the Midnight Mystery family, you won't miss out on a single chilling tale. As a subscriber, you'll be the first to know when a new episode lurks around the corner, ready to pull you back into the shadowy depths of the unknown. This is the Midnight Mystery signing off, leaving you with a simple reminder. When the clock strikes 12, fear the silence, for that's when our tales come to life. Good night, Midnight listeners, and remember, not all who wander into the dark are lost.